picture in my Nana's old scrapbook, like a sepia-tone mirror with a century-old look.
Hello, and welcome to Tell Me About Your Song, the podcast where I talk to musicians and songwriters about a song they've written. Today's guest is Libby Koch, and the song she'll be talking about is named All That Love from her album Tennessee Colony. So where would you like to start with this song, Libby?
I've always been interested in genealogy and family history. My grandfather on my mom's side was a big storyteller and always told us stories of he and my grandmother growing up in this little small town called Tennessee Colony in East Texas. My sister has an amazing voice. I have an uncle who's a drummer. But other than that, no one in our family is really super musical. But my grandfather was such a storyteller, and I know that that's where my songwriting bug came from. It was really just trying to tell stories, you know?
I found her picture in my Nana's old scrapbook, like a sepia-tone mirror with a century-old look. My great-grandmother Arabella was her name.
Kind of what happened, I was helping my mom get some winter clothes for my grandmother out of the storage unit that we have. And I picked up a photo album, and this picture fell out. And I turned over and looked at it. And it was a relative I'd never seen before, but who looked exactly like me, like creepy, exactly like me. And I flipped it over, and it said Arabella Shelton, 1906. And I didn't even know who that was. So I asked my mom, and it turns out it's my maternal grandmother's grandmother. And I mean, looked so much like me that it was like, well, okay. I always thought I looked more like Dad, but no, it's her. So I kind of had the idea to set several of my grandfather's stories to songs and to music because, you know, a lot of his stories in particular I heard for the first time when I was a kid. So I first started writing songs after I found that picture, and I kind of went through this process of I gathered up all the family documents that I could find. I was really lucky too. My grandfather and his brother and sister, before he passed away, got together and filmed a couple of videos telling stories about their childhood and their experiences in World War II. After he passed, it was too soon for me to watch it. So I really hadn't watched much of it until I started on this project. So I sat down with the DVDs and took notes, and I think I had 3 or 4 songs come from that, and then a couple others from stories that I knew. And then my mom had this grandparents book that she had my great-grandmother fill out for me when I was a baby. And I had never seen it before. And Mom was like, I think I have this thing. And I can't remember. It was a notepad of paper, front and back, that my great-grandmother wrote for me when I was 1 year old, telling all of her stories about growing up.
Oh, wow.
It was just so cool to go through and read all that stuff and think, oh my gosh, like in 1981, she took the time to do this for me. I went to a family reunion last weekend. We try to get together once a year, and we were in Palestine, we were probably 20 miles from Tennessee Colony at this place called Crystal Lake, kind of a fishing camp. And so we had dinner. I think there were like 50 of us there. And then we did a big campfire outside afterwards. And I brought my guitar, and my great aunt, who we call Sugar, my grandfather's sister, asked me if I would play some of the songs on Tennessee Colony. So it was really special to be able to sit there, you know, so close to where it all went down and play those songs for my family. It was really special. This song was kind of, when I get to the end of an album project, I look at the songs and I write down what the themes are of each song, and I'll think, what is missing? And on this album, I felt like it needed one song to kind of tie the experience all together. And I thought, well, shoot, I'll just write about finding the picture. That's what set this whole thing in motion in the first place. So this was the last song that I wrote for the record. And so kind of the way All That Love came about is I was thinking to myself, okay, if I look exactly like this person, how else was I like her? I think we're all kind of searching for who we are. And I think it's interesting to see how family shapes that. But, you know, we're also our own people. And so this song kind of became an examination of that. And also, I think, kind of a celebration of how blessed I am to be able to find out more about my family and to have, you know, that kind of love and support. But I thought it was cool because it felt to me like it really synthesized the whole process of writing this collection of songs about family and faith and where we come from and just kind of the exploration of those ideas. So kind of a concept album and a concept song in a sense.
Do I walk the way she walked? Do I sing like she sang? I got my father's laugh, and that means everything. All I am and all I got, and my faith in what's above, it comes from more than flesh and blood. I think it's all that love, all that love.
I just got the ukulele. I was on vacation, actually. So the first line that came to me was, do I walk the way she walked? Do I sing like she sang? And then when I came home from the vacation, I sat down with a guitar, and that riff that starts with the E minor in between the chorus and verses just kind of came out.
I noticed that you do a thing where each time the chorus comes around, it's a little bit different.
Right. I think sometimes I like that kind of lyrical device to change it up a little bit, because you can turn the chorus 90 degrees and it just goes a different ways. These songs are about my mom's side of the family, but I also love my dad's side of the family too, of course. And so I wanted to kind of give a shout out to my dad. And also because I always thought that I looked more like my dad than my mom. I think I act more like my dad than my mom. I act like my mom too. She's great. But here I am looking exactly like my maternal great-grandmother. So I kind of wanted to give Dad a shout out. Like, I know I have my father's laugh, and that means everything. And then my mom is just this awesome, strong lady. And I know I got my strength from her. Single mom, worked her butt off. My parents divorced when I was young, but they were both great. We used to joke that we were the most functional, dysfunctional family out there. I was really lucky that they were both there for me and supportive. But my mom, she showed me what it meant to be a strong, independent woman at a young age, and I'm super grateful for that. So I really wanted to acknowledge that in the song too. So I know I've got my mama's strength, and that means everything. And then in the last chorus, it kind of ties it together.
I know I look like Arabella, and that means everything.
So then with the verses, I just kind of started trying to tell the story. The first verse is about finding the picture and realizing, I don't know, it sounds weird that seeing a picture of somebody, of an ancestor who looks exactly like you is life-changing, but it is in a way. And I don't know, it's hard to explain why. I guess the song tries, but
it's kind of hard to imagine what it was like that long ago.
Yeah.
And then to see this sort of physical connection.
Right. And it's like, all right, so there's this physical connection with this person who I never met. And then you think about all the other family members, on my dad's side who were gone before I got here, or, who I didn't get enough time with. I don't know, how does that shape who we are? It's neat, I think.
One autumn day I passed through our East Texas town. 200 years of family are resting in the red clay ground.
The second verse is also true. I had a show in Dallas and was going down to Palestine, Texas for a family reunion. And it was this kind of beautiful autumn day, and driving through this windy road, just kind of one of those moments where you're like, this is gorgeous and awesome. It was Saturday afternoon, kind of crisp outside. And I saw a sign for Tennessee Colony, and I was going a little too fast, and I passed. I was like, dang it. I should have just turned off, because it had been a few years since I'd been through there. And then I passed another sign, and I missed it again. And then I passed the third sign, and I thought, okay, I got to turn. So I went in, and I hadn't been in ages, but I remember from when my grandfather passed away. I mean, there's not a whole lot to the town. I don't think it's even a stoplight anymore. I think there's a stop sign in the middle with a post office that I think used to be a general store. From what I understand, my great-grandparents, Arabella and her husband, Henry, I believe, ran the general store like in the 30s. But then if you go up the road, there's a cemetery there, and that's where my grandfather's buried, and just generations of my family is there. And so I just, for whatever reason, felt compelled to go walk in and pay my respects to my grandfather. And so I just kind of started walking around, and it's probably a few months after I found that Arabella picture. And sure enough, I walked right down the row and found hers just kind of on accident. And it was just, again, you feel that connection. There's something about generations of my family are resting in the red clay ground. I mean, that's where it was. And it was just, so I felt like those two experiences kind of tied it together. And it's rare that I write a song that's that literal, but I think in this context it worked.
Well, I am more than just these puzzle pieces. Life is more complex than science and free will. So I am thankful for my time here, Jesus. simple things in life that mystify me still.
A friend of mine, Connie Mims, who's a great songwriter here in Texas, she does a lot of kind of songwriting workshops, and she says, never write a bridge unless there's something else that has to be said. And when I was looking at the song, I thought there needs to be that kind of wrap it up moment. Because it's kind of what we're talking about. Like, I'm more than just puzzle pieces. And yeah, we're like this combination of genes and our choices, but you know, it's more than that. We have souls. And then I kind of wanted to give a nod to my family's faith and simple things in life that mystify me still. Because it's just the little things like that. You know, it was a throwaway moment, just picking up this picture. If another picture had fallen out, it wouldn't have happened. Just a little moment that ended up having some greater significance for whatever reason. I grew up going to church with my mom and my grandparents on that side, and I started singing in the church choir, and that's really how I fell in love with music. And that's where I learned how to play guitar and where I started writing songs. It's a big part of my musical journey too, so I kind of wanted to honor that through these songs in a way too. You know, I was raised in the church and a Christian, but I wouldn't say that I write Christian music, but my faith definitely shapes my lyrics, especially. I'm not super vocal about my spiritual life. You know, it's kind of for me, I guess. But this song definitely, or this record definitely had, like I said, some gospel influences and kind of faith-based songs, which, you know, it was that side of the family that kind of introduced me to, like, my grandmother and grandfather. We went to church every Sunday, and you know, and I found a great community of faith there and found myself spiritually there in high school and college. And, you know, it's something that I've carried with me throughout my life, and it's important to me. And I think certainly my faith has grown broader in scope as I grow older. Personally, I think God is really big, way bigger than our tiny human minds can figure out, but we're all trying our best, I guess. But for me, it's a faith thing and a connection thing to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's one of the real true joys in life, for me at least. It's cool that that kind of seeps out into my music sometimes. I mean, it can't not.
Halle, halle, hallelujah.
And then it goes into the hallelujahs.
Yeah. With this Tennessee Colony project, I wanted it to have kind of a gospel feel generally. I grew up playing music in the church, and that's kind of how I got started. You know, kind of those really great old-time religion hymns, you know, that bringing in the sheaves and that sort of thing, and how great thou art and blessed assurance and all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of bring in that hallelujah chorus, because that word hallelujah says a lot, you know, with just the one word in it. This is kind of one of those feelings and situations that in a lot of ways can't be explained. So it's just a hallelujah, that was awesome, you know? And thank you, Arabella, for making your picture jump out or whatever you did. So that was kind of how I wanted to wrap it up.
Halle, hallelujah.
I, as an audience member, I love being able to sing along. And this is one, especially with the hallelujahs, that people can sing along to. And there have been several shows where I've been able to really kind of get some audience participation. One was at WFMT's Folk Stage, Rich Warren from the Midnight Special. And it's a really cool deal. It's a live radio show that's broadcast, I think, nationwide. But he also has a studio audience of about 40 people. So it's this really cool hybrid of performing on the radio, which is usually kind of in a booth, talking to a host across the glass with a microphone. But it was also a real gig where you want to connect with your audience. But they are a really active audience also and love to sing along. So we were able to really do some awesome hallelujahs on that one. We had quite the chorus going. That was a cool night.
So what was the process of taking your song and arranging it?
My producer Jack and I, we had already worked together on one album, so we just kind of dove straight into this one. And I had a pretty clear vision of how I wanted it to be. You know, like I said, very gospel-y, but with a kind of bluegrass tinge to it. In the beginning, I wanted it to be more spare than it ended up being, but I really like the feel that we got. So we just kind of dove in on pre-production. I actually cut the scratch tracks, you know, like to a click track myself at my home studio, because originally I was just going to produce it. And then I thought, you know what? I'll get it done faster and better. It's going to be more expensive, but I'm just going to go work with a great producer and get great musicians on it. Because ultimately, it would have taken me like 6 months to get it done. So Jack and I dove in pretty straight away, and I'd been playing this song live for a while too, so I kind of knew what I wanted out of it. We used Rick Richards to play drums. He is unbelievable. He's played on a lot of the Texas Americana type records. He's the king of that shuffle. And then my bass player, Rankin Peters, he came and did upright bass on everything. And then my producer, Jack, is friends with Lloyd Maines and Eleanor Whitmore, who is with the Mastersons and plays fiddle for Steve Earle. And so she put the fiddle on, and Lloyd did, I think, dobro on this song. And I mean, just so lucky to be able to work with, I think some of the best musicians out there. I was real lucky to have Susan Gibson sing on this song. She wrote Wide Open Spaces, and she's a beautiful singer, and she did the coolest harmony lines. Jack Saunders, my producer, did the low harmony on the Hallelujahs. This ended up being my favorite song on the record, just the way it all came out.
I think it's all that love, all that love.
I love collaborating with other musicians, and I feel like the great part about collaborating with people who do different stuff than you is that they're really good at stuff that I'm not really good at. So I love to just be like, hey man, what do you want to put on it? And most of the time, I find that results in a better product than if I had some specific thing in mind. And I think that's kind of how an album can organically become what it's going to be. And that's certainly what happened with this project.
So if people would like to hear more of your music, what should they do?
You can go online to Libby Koch, that's KOCH.com, no relation to the brothers. And you can find me at Libby Koch on Twitter or on the Facebook. I'm on the Instagram. You can find me.
And your tour dates and things are on there as well?
Yeah. I'm kind of sticking around Texas for the first part of this year, getting ready to put out a new record. But I'll hit the road to the Southeast and Northeast this summer and fall. I'm pretty much going to hit the road probably 1st of May and not come back for the rest of the year. So keep a lookout. I'll try to get up your way soon.
Well, my name's Jacob Haller, and my website is music.jwgh.org if anyone wants to see what my music is all about. I have a blog devoted to Tell Me About Your Song, and I'll post links to all of Libby's websites and the things we've been talking about there. You can find that at yoursongpodcast.tumblr.com, or you can go to the Tell Me About Your Song webpage at tellmeaboutyoursong.com. And you can also subscribe to this as a podcast in iTunes or Stitcher. It's been a while since I've mentioned it, but a few people have actually reviewed this on iTunes in the last few months, and I wanted to give them a shout out. Thank you, Grace Elm, R. Penich, I hope that's pronounced correctly, and someone identified only as He Said What. So thank you for reviewing the podcast, and I love hearing what people have to say about it, so I encourage everyone else to do that too. And with all that said, we're going to go out by listening to the song that we've been talking about, All That Love by Libby Koch from her album Tennessee Calling. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jacob.
I found her picture in my Nana's old scrapbook, like a sepia tone mirror with a century-old look. My great-grandmother Arabella was her name. I found out I'm her spitting image, and I would never be the same. Do I walk the way she walked? Do I sing like she sang? I know I got my father's laugh, and that means everything. All I am and all I got, and my faith in what's above, it comes from more than flesh and blood. I think it's all that love, all that love, all that love. One autumn day I passed through our East Texas town. 200 years of family are resting in the red clay ground. So I bought some flowers, found Miss Arabella's grave. I laid them down and then I thanked her for what she didn't know she gave. Do I walk the way she walked? Do I sing like she sang? I know I got my mama's strength, That means everything, all I am and all I got. And my faith in what's above, it comes from more than flesh and blood. I think it's all that love, all that love, all that love. Well, I am more than just these puzzle pieces. Life is more complex than science and free will. So I am thankful for my time here, Jesus. Simple things in life that mystify me still. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. The way she walked, do I sing like she sang? I know I look like Arabella, and that means everything. All I am, all I got, and my faith in what's above, it comes from more than flesh and blood. I think it's all that love, all that love, all that love, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
There's another song on there called Just Carol, about when my grandfather was a little boy. They were having the Methodists were having a big tent revival, and they were doing a bunch of baptisms, and this mean old guy in town, Just Carol, at the urging of his mother, decided to get baptized, and the whole town was kind of shocked by this. And so the preacher asked my grandfather to run across the road and go get a pitcher of water, which was for the baptism, but my granddad thought that they wanted a pitcher of ice water to drink because it was August in East Texas with no air conditioning, and they had the only ice box in town. So he runs across the street, gets a pitcher of ice water, which then the preacher pours over this mean old guy's head, and he cussed up a storm and blew up the entire meeting. And it was a pretty funny story. But so I set that one to music, and I'll play it live and people chuckle, but when I play it for my family, they laugh their butts off. And so that's really kind of that's a fun one. We've been hearing that story forever. I mean, that's one of the classic family stories. So I knew right away that was one that I wanted to do. That was a bit of a. So the punchline of that song is, the moral of the story: if you're mean, the Lord, He finds a way to cool you off in the end.
Oh, Just Carol was a mighty nasty fellow, a fast-talking real SOB. Folks from Tennessee Colony will tell you he's the meanest cat that you'll ever see. Rumor has it that he shot a man in Dallas because he looked him straight in the eye. It might not be true, but either way, I'd say regardless, you better stay